Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet with Chris Stiles of 365 Pin Code. Hi there, Chris. How are you?
Hello, John. Excellent. Lovely to be back.
As ever, I'm always delighted to have you on our YouTube channel because I learn so much through these, and it's always entertaining but also quite hard hitting at times as well, Chris. And what have you got lined up for us today?
Well, John, thanks for that. And yeah, last time we chatted about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and you'll remember unpacking their intelligent mathematical blueprints and revealing the numerical construct of their relationship and the various lessons that they both needed to learn, and that their meeting and their parting was not random. It was actually very clearly represented in the numbers. So, John, as always, on behalf of Suzanne and I and 365 Pin Code, we're very grateful for the opportunity to share with you and with your audience some of the research that we're doing. And tonight, we're actually really going to go straight into some very, very thorny topics. We're going to cover off Donald Trump and the burning question, will he be the next president of the United States? This is something that I've investigated in great detail, and I am going to give you an answer. We will also go into America and the various countries that are role players right now in the war that is raging in the Ukraine. And we're going to then, using number synchronicity, begin to paint what I believe is a pretty intelligent construct of the future that we are looking at between now, which is 2022, and 2026 to 2027. So hopefully, we're going to deliver some very well-researched and well-argued and logical views to your audience tonight, and then also get them thinking critically about the years that are coming, because we are definitely heading into extraordinarily dark times, John. I wish that I could actually portray it in a different way, but right now that is the only way to truly convey the message, is that we are heading into exceptionally difficult and challenging times, which are necessary because after the darkness follows the light.
Right. Yes. And we think about last time, Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, and that was fascinating because to actually show how they matched against each other as being a life path which was always destined to cross, to learn lessons from each other, and ultimately, what I found really fascinating about that is, at the end of it, they have, when they look at it, when they read through their mathematical blueprint, they have every reason to turn to each other and be grateful to each other for the life lessons they've each learned. Whereas, obviously, what we see when we look at the media and all the coverage that followed it, gratitude to each other would be something that would be pretty hard to come by. Nevertheless, it gives you a fresh pair of eyes to look through the events and to understand. And the other thing is, of course, then that is telling us that this mathematical blueprint exists for all of us, and that our life paths are always crossing for a reason, because they're supposed to, because there are life lessons to learn, to move forward, to learn your lessons and move forward, or fail to learn your lessons and repeat the lessons in a different way in the future. And this really boggles my mind, because this comes back to something that you told me very early on, Chris. Everything in the universe and the multiverse is made up of numbers. Everything comes back to numbers. But that is what also gives you the ability to look at the influences now and in the future to help to prepare us for what's ahead of us, correct?
Absolutely, John. And what I think is really going to blow your mind, and hopefully the minds of your viewers tonight, is the fact that when I'm dealing with Donald Trump and discussing the issue around Donald Trump and the question, will he be the next president of the United States? I've actually done so much research that I've extrapolated into another dimension. So where I did Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that was a one-on-one. It was just, it was a relationship between them. The information that I'm going to be sharing with you shortly, obviously in slide format with all the maths and the numbers up there for you to be able to explain. And it's lovely to have you there working with me, because you know how to work with me. And thank you, John. Is I'm actually going to show you the construct of the Trump family. Right. And I'm going to show you how there's no doubt that we need to completely open up our minds and our consciousness now to the proof that we are dealing with soul groups, your family, etc., etc. This is not just an arbitrary arrangement. These are souls that have been on journeys and continue to go on journeys, and you will just be blown away tonight when you see the mathematical construct of the number of the members of the Trump family around Donald Trump, and you suddenly realize, hold on a moment, it doesn't take more than one active brain cell to realize that there is something going on here. So this is the first time, and again, thank you to you and your channel, that I'm taking this research into the public domain around the fact that we are not only does my mathematical blueprint exist, but when you start to study integrated mathematical blueprints, like I'm going to reveal to you in the Trump family, there's no doubt about it whatsoever that this is now proving that there are soul groups, and that a family and the construct of a family is a highly, highly organized event. It's not just, random, you and my mom, you're my dad, you're my brother, etc. Forget it. It is so much more. And I again, what this is just revealing to me, John, is how little we know.
Yes.
How honestly, how dumb we are, and how ill-informed we are as to actually the grand construct of this universe that we are, this numerical mathematical soup that we are engaging with on a daily basis. It just brings us back to, once again, why have we been kept so unenlightened? And this is something that really, I know I say it in every interview I have with you, and I sound like I'm always on my soapbox, but how is it, John, that my work is now bringing this to the fore in 2022? Are you honestly telling me that this has never been discovered before? Or has it always been known, yet it has been suppressed because it's a brilliant thing to keep people suppressed and oppressed, because that's the way that you control them? And my goodness me, haven't the churches and organized religion done that, and a brilliant job at that? But anyway, look, I'm repeating myself now, but this is going to be a real mind-blowing session. And I know that by the time we finished with just the Trump family and unpacking the question, will Donald Trump be the next president of the United States come the 2024 election in November? Then I move on to the various years and the way I see countries interacting with each other, and how I see organizations like the United Nations and the European Union, and how and what numbers resonate with them, and how this brings years into play. I think we are really, really on the verge of probably one of the most terrifying yet exciting times in the history of humanity.
Wow, that's huge. I'm really interested to work out. I mean, it's quite daunting, I think, in many ways, when you start to see how these things are starting to unfold. But I hear it from so many quarters that we are in for a change that it will change humanity. It will change mankind as we, the way we've come to know life as we have. I don't pretend to know how.
Well, John, remember, we are heading towards 2027. Now, 2027 is going to be a landmark year in the history of humanity, because it brings the twos of the millennium that we're in into play. It brings the 7, which is all about, if you will, understanding and connecting the dots and cosmic consciousness. And it brings the master number 11 into play, which is all about illumination, enlightenment, teaching. And remember, whenever the light shines, it lights up the darkness, and suddenly you begin to understand that. So the thing is, the way my mind is working, that's the role of 2027. 2027 is when suddenly everybody's going to truly understand the darkness for what it was. But right. The thing is, there's a whole if you will, load of darkness that's got to play itself out before 2027. And this is what we are entering right now, this very, very year in 2022. Right. This is when everything's getting extraordinarily real. Heading towards what I believe is the grand finale in 2026, with 2027 then being, oh my word, what happened? Everybody's searching frantically, looking for new truths, etc., etc., etc. And then come 2028, which introduces the number 3 energy again. It's almost like that is, if you will, when everything starts to take off again. But in order to understand the darkness, which will happen in 2027, when the light really gets switched on, we have to go through this dark time now. And that's why I say we are about to go through some of the darkest times, I believe, in the history of humanity. And, John, to that effect, let's just take what has taken place today. In America, the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, has just overturned Roe and Wade, rather. Now, this is absolutely enormous, because this is a landmark event in the history of the United States. Roe and Wade was always considered to be one of these rulings that suddenly gave women the right to have autonomy over their body, because it centers around the matter of abortion. Yeah. Now look at what's happened today. Today, the Supreme Court of the United States have overturned this. Now, is it a random event? Well, I'm going to show to you just now that the United States of America resonates with number 3, which introduces shadow 6. Okay, right. 2022 is a number 6 universal year. So in other words, and it's all about emotions, etc., massive emotional upheaval. So look how the shadow 6 of the name United States of America resonates or synchronizes perfectly with what has happened today being the 24th, which is the number 6, 2 and 4, 6 of June, the 6th month of the year, in the year 2022, 6. 6, 6, 6. Now, you people can read into that whatever they want, but nothing happens randomly. So today was a day where the universal energy was all about family, relationships, responsibility, matters of the heart, community. And look at what has happened. Look at what has happened in terms of Roe versus Wade. It has ripped America apart. The media is just full of grief. Joe Biden, everybody, saying that this is the worst decision. You go and have a look at Twitter and see what Barack Obama has put out there, lambasting this decision of the Supreme Court of the United States, saying that the only reason that this has happened is because of the way Donald Trump played it in terms of getting certain judges onto SCOTUS, et cetera, in order to be in a very powerful position to have this influence. So nothing that is happening, John, is random. And the thing is, I see these, I just see these cosmic connections and these number patterns all over the place. And that's why I'm not in the slightest bit surprised that this decision, which has really turned America on its head and literally got Americans to the point where now America is starting to really eat itself alive from the inside, should happen on a day which has got 3 6s in it, which coincides perfectly with the number 6 vibration of 2022.
Yes. That is amazing.
So I think, John, maybe let's get into the question of Donald Trump and let's really dig into it,
right?
And see what comes up. And you, as we're going along, you fire any questions you'd like.
I will. There we go.
That's fantastic, right? Thank you, John. So, John, what I do, as you well know, is I map using numerical notation, the life path of a given individual from birth through to the age of 100. I just use that as the timeline. And then within the mathematical notation or the data strings that exist for each person year on year lies incredible information richness, which, because of the vast amount of work that I've done on this and research, I'm able to understand and interpret, and therefore, hopefully start to bring incredibly interesting lines of thinking into the public domain. Now, John, you will recall that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton to become the 45th president, or POTUS, of the United States in 2016. And that was a very unexpected win, because everybody thought that Hillary Clinton was going to take it.
Right.
Now, if you look at 2016 and you ignore the date and you ignore the age that Trump was, and you look at the rest from 11 across to the arrow on the right, you'll see that the line of code for Donald Trump in 2017 is identical again in 2025.
Right.
That's why I've highlighted both of them. So there it is, 11, and then the 19 and the 1 and the 16 and the 7, and then again the 16 and the 7 and the 19 and the 1 and the 11 and the 2. Now, the thing is, to someone who doesn't understand how I develop these mathematical constructs, that might seem like gibberish, but to me, that is gold. This is exactly the type of strategic human futurology that reveals to you that what happened in 2016 is going to happen again in 2025.
Right.
Therefore, you do not have to be a rocket scientist to realize that with that line of code repeating in 2025, there is an exceptionally high probability that Donald Trump is going to win the next presidential election. Now, there's been a lot of stuff that goes around in terms of, will he be able to make it? What about other contestants? For example, I saw a tweet the other day from Elon Musk saying that he backs Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, to be the next president of the United States. And John, I've run Ron DeSantis's numbers, I've built his charts, I've actually put this out on Twitter. And for those people who are really interested to follow what my day-to-day research findings are and what I'm seeing, et cetera, they should really follow me on Twitter, because that's where I post this. And I post volumes of this, literally all day, every day. These kind of numbered data strings, and I explain what I'm seeing. I've just done an entire analysis on the upcoming heavyweight fight between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. And this is what I do. I use these kind of things in order to test and learn. But there it is, John. And when I ran Ron DeSantis's numbers, I can absolutely see him giving it a full go in 2023. It's there in his numbers. You can see that he's definitely going to put his hand up to try and be the next president, but it's not going to happen. That dog's not going to hunt. So it is very clear to me that if you're talking America and you're talking Republicans, when it comes to crunch time, there is only going to be one person who's going to be sitting in the presidential candidate seat, and that is Donald Trump. And the question is, will he win or not? And I am saying that there is an exceptionally high probability. In other words, I'm actually giving him more than an 85% chance of becoming the next president of the United States. And I'm going to explain to you why I say that. I'm going to do so using the numbers of his family. And I'm also then going to go later on, John, into the numbers of Joe Biden, of Kamala Harris, et cetera, and actually reveal that their numbers just do not stack up in any shape or form. So I cannot see the Democrats winning the next election, and with Trump in the hot seat, he would become president again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. It's because I was there living in America when this came about last time, and through much of the Trump era, I was living in America, and it is an interesting time, because what you see is that America is very much divided. If you look at it around the friends that I have and the contacts I have out there, those who love him truly love it, and they see he can do no wrong, regardless of what happens. And on the other hand, he's hated by many, and families are effectively be broken down the middle, who won't speak to each other again because they're on opposing side of the camps. Normally, it's not really that cut and dried. But with him, he's very much about division energy, whether it's dividing his own people or whether it's dividing America versus the rest of the world. But it's kind of divide and conquer. And it's interesting to think that regardless of everything, he could well be back in. But I do understand there are many people out there who really, really still see him as a leader for America. So yeah, it's amazing given everything that's been going on in the courts. But nevertheless, the numbers are very much stacking up there, Chris. There's no arguing.
Well, John, you see, this is the first time I believe that real hard evidence is being brought into frame around what the future looks like. Because a lot of people say, yeah, but there's no way to look into the future. There's no way to tell the future. There's no way to predict the future. And I absolutely disagree with him. That is why I am so obsessed with building and developing this field of human futurology, because I'm actually sticking my neck out here and I'm saying that I really, truly believe that this is showing you in hard numbers that Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States of America. And the thing is, if you think about where America is right now, as of today, after Roe and Wade, then if you think about the war that is going to rage within the country up to the next election in terms of division, you now suddenly realize that that's why I say America is actually eating itself alive from the inside. Now, this is going to make America extraordinarily weak and extraordinarily vulnerable. Yes. And the thing is, if you look at America and if you think about America going south, if America catches a cold, if the United Kingdom catches a cold, given the enormous influence that they have over the world, et cetera, the rest of the world gets pneumonia. So start to think about the global ramifications and the repercussions, the knock-on of what this has in terms of economic stability, political stability, social stability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I believe that what we're looking at now is the first cut of why we are heading into such incredibly troubled times. Because much as people would like to think Donald Trump is a thing of the past, I'm telling you today, John, that is not the case. He is absolutely everything but done and dusted. Right. Let's move on to the next slide. So here we start to have a look at what I call the family constellation, if you will, or the soul group. Now, the surname Trump, when you analyze the surname, T-R-U-M-P, totals 25. That's the vibration for the surname Trump. And look at Ivanka Trump's numbers from 2024 through to 2029. There you can see the red numbers that are driving those years as 25-7.
Wow.
So in other words, for her, it is the family vibration coming through at maximum intensity.
Yes.
Maximum intensity. So that already reveals to me that something enormous is going to happen around the Trump family, because there it is. I mean, she is a daughter of the Trump family, if you will. If you look at Donald Trump, I think he's probably the one. She's the one who he takes with wherever he goes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You look at how he made her one of his most trusted advisors. And there it is. You can see the Trump surname 25-7 in full force and momentum from 2024 through to 2029. Now, this is no random accident, none whatsoever. And in fact, if you go up and you go and look at 2021, which is when Donald, because he lost the election at the end of 2020. Yes. And if you go up and you go and have a look at 2021 through to 2023, you can actually see that those 3 years are driven by the number 22-4. And there's her, which is her shadow or emotional life path number. That's the black number on the left, that SLFP, 22-4. So there you can see what an a massive emotional event this was, you know, the loss of that election. But here, as clear as daylight, is the fact that the Trump family is coming back with a bang. Now, what is very interesting, John, that I want to draw your attention to, is if you look at 2027 and 2028, can you see those two red blocks?
Yes.
Linking them, linking 2027 and 2028. That's it. You've got it.
Yeah.
Now, that is an indication of an extreme event around the family. 2027, you can see that there's a 777 on the right. And so, in other words, that is a massively significant family event that takes place in 2027 emotionally for her, and then it shifts down and to the left in 2028. So that's when it becomes the physical experience. So this shows us that in 2027, there is something very dramatic that happens to the Trump family. It's as clear as a bell when you can read the numbers. Now, what did I say to you earlier? 2027 is a number 11 master number year, the year of illumination, enlightenment, teaching, etc., etc. What has Donald Trump got? He's got a master number 22 life path. So therefore, 2027 is synchronizing, the 11 of 27 is synchronizing perfectly with the 22 of his life path. The 11 of 2027 is synchronizing perfectly with the 22 of Ivanka's shadow life path. So that shows you that first cut of evidence that shows that definitely something massive is happening around the Trump family in 2024. Hence, further evidence for me that he is going to become the president. However, looking at 2027, we see a very dramatic event around this family that has a huge impact on Ivanka. So now let's move on to the next slide, please, John, which is all about Donald Trump Jr. Let's look at Donald Trump Jr. If we go and look at 2024, what do we see? We see that it's powered by, that year is powered by the number 19, and there's another number 1 off to the right, hence the red block connecting the two ones. That means it's a massive new beginning for Donald Trump Jr. in 2024, which then spills over to 2025. Again, further evidence for me that Donald Trump is going to become the president of the United States. But now, remember, the family name Trump totals 25/7. So 25, what is the karmic octave of 25? Well, the karmic octave of 25 is 16, John. And if you think about tarot, just for a moment, if we can digress, you know, number 16, tarot, major arcana is the tower, which is that lightning bolt coming in with the tower. The tower is exploding in flames. People are leaping out of it, etc., etc. Now, go and have a look at 2027 in the life of Donald Trump Jr. It is karmic 16 linking with karmic 13 on the right. So as someone who studies number patterns, who studies how numbers combine and fit together, that is a devastating personal, emotional experience that Donald Trump Jr. has got to undergo in 2027. And that synchronizes perfectly with the one that we just saw for Ivanka in the previous chart, which was the 777.
Yeah.
So there's further evidence, hard evidence, that there's a dramatic event taking place around the Trump family in 2024, but there's an even more dramatic event taking place around the Trump family in 2027. So let's move on to the next slide, which analyzes Baron William Trump. And if we go and have a look at 2024 and 2025, there's the sequence, 19-1, the red numbers, exactly as you saw previous slide with his brother, the brand new beginning. To me, and remember, John, other people might not be able to understand this. And it may just be the fact, John, that I do have Asperger's and autism. But the thing is, when I look at this, this is just genius inside of these numbers, because this is telling me a powerful story. And it's telling me a powerful story in terms of the future of the Trump family. And the future of the Trump family is, as I'm looking at this, there's again further evidence through his third child that there's an enormous event taking place in 2024. How can this not be he's becoming the president? But now, John, let's go and have a look at 2027 and look at how there's a devastating event that takes place there, which involves 22-4. So if you just focus on the 2027 line, John.
Yeah.
There you've got karmic 16 in the yellow, 16 and 7. Yeah. Then you've got 2022 in the red. Now, John, my research has shown that wherever there is a 7 and a 4 combining, especially where it is a karmic 16 and the master number 22, it represents a cataclysmic event in that person's life. Okay. Cataclysmic. This is a negative event of the highest order. So there is the third event, John. I've showed you the 7 in Ivanka's numbers in 2027. I've showed you the 7 in Donald Jr.'s numbers in 2027. Now I'm showing you the cataclysmic collision of two very antagonistic numbers, 16 and 22 in 2027 for Barron. So no doubt in my mind, Donald Trump is going to become the next president of the United States. But, and there's a huge but, what is going to happen to the Trump family in 2027? Yes. Let's move on to the next slide, please, John. And this brings in his wife, Melania Trump. Now, if you look at 2028 for Melania Trump, you can see a 99 that is connected with a red block. There we go. That 99 is personal, emotional, and that represents the mother of all endings on a personal level, John. Okay? Right. So now we just go up and we go and have a look at 2027, and there we see 14-5 on the four. Look to the left. What date is Donald Trump born on? The 14th. We come across, there's the red 6. What is the number 6? Donald Trump is born in the month of June. It's also one of Melania's karmic lessons because she's got no 6s in her name. Therefore, when she married Donald Trump, the karmic lesson that she needed to learn through the family was being brought to her through him because of his being born in the month of June, the number 6. So here's the fourth piece in the puzzle, John. And let's just, John, go up. Let's go up to 2024. And can you see there the 55 for Melania? The 55, yes. There it is. You've got the arrow on it there. That means she is having to cope with dramatic change in 2024. Dramatic change. I don't think in her wildest dreams she could ever imagine her husband becoming president of the United States again. And to me, that 55 in her chart in 2024, followed by the 99 in 2028, reveals to me, with all the other numbers that I've shared with you in the charts of Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Barron, that I have no doubt that Trump is going to win the next presidential election. It's going to be an enormous shock for his family, especially Melania. But look at all of their numbers, the family numbers, including her, from 2027 through to 2028 are awful, absolutely awful. And what are we looking at here, John? Are we potentially looking at something, because he is such a controversial figure, because he is so Machiavellian in the way that he approaches life, ruthless, etc., etc.? Are we potentially looking at the next assassination of a president of the United States of America? Because let's be, John, I'm just putting it out there, because what I am seeing in the numbers are so dramatic for the Trump family that there is definitely something enormous that is going to happen. Yes. And while I would not wish that on any family, I don't think that my mind is running too far into the future in too creative a way to actually propose that, given how Trump divides America, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With him coming into power, and then really being responsible, if you will, for America being torn apart even further, could this not then be a very dramatic attempt, either an attempted assassination or a successful assassination? But it's the only thing that could kind of make sense to me in terms of the impact that the numbers have on this Trump family. And
Right.
Isn't it amazing, John, having shared this with you, where you can see that there's this enormous event in 2027 that impacts the whole family. Now, don't tell me that we're not dealing with soul groups here.
Right.
And don't tell me that we're not dealing with highly organized, intelligent mathematical design, synchronized on a level that you and I cannot even begin to fathom yet.
It's incredible. And it's amazing in its consistency as well, isn't it? It's kind of like, bouncing from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
Well, John, this is the kind of research that I've been doing for a number of years. It is so controversial because it brings soul groups into play. It brings the intelligent mathematical design into play. It brings into play the fact that our future is hard-coded, that we are actually basically walking, if you will, an experiment, all of these various things. It brings free will into play in terms of, what exactly is free will? Well, if you've got a whole bunch of events that are coming your way, which are hard-coded, the only free will that you have is how you're going to respond to them.
Right.
So this is throwing down the gauntlet. But honestly, John, up until this point, I have not had the confidence to be able to take this kind of research into the public domain because it is so exceptionally controversial. But when I analyzed the Trump family and when I saw this, and given what I believe we are going into now, which is the darkest of times, which I'm going to explain to you shortly why I believe it will end in 2026, I just think that now is the time through you, you wonderful man, and through your channel, whose sole purpose is enlightenment, now is the time to bring this type of research to the fore. So it's a very bold and a very brave move that I'm making, but it's all there in the numbers. And John, nothing like this will have ever been published or appeared in the public domain up until this discussion.
And one of the things that really does interest me about this, Chris, and as you've said before on a couple of occasions, is that what you've got to here, what you've achieved is actually it's a beautiful thing. The fact that you have the Asperger's syndrome and that you can focus on numbers and you see patterns in numbers and you can kind of draw this content out is an amazing gift. Okay, now you make the point that if you've done this, then surely there are others out there, within, whether it be the Pentagon or Ministry of Defense or whatever, there's got to be somebody else who's kind of done this as well. Now, here's the thing. So if we agree that this is kind of what this looks like there's a major cataclysmic event for the Trump household in 2027, it could be a presidential assassination or an attempt. Now, they will know this by then because they have all the information, surely, right? So
correct.
This is kind of now looking into the future and saying, okay, this is what is predestined. However, the free will thing is still a real thing. And if you can see it coming, you will do your best to dodge that particular bullet. Right? Now, how do you perceive that? Because assuming this is going out, and doubtless Donald will be picking up on this before too long, and he'll be putting on his bulletproof vest throughout 2027.
Well, John, I'm not sure if I'm not going to have to don mine. I must tell you, it is with a great amount of trepidation that I bring this information into the public domain because I know that I'm right. This is the thing. That sounds so arrogant, John, but I actually know. I know that these numbers are spot on. They are spot on. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, John.
No, not at all. It's because the suppression of information, we know, has been going on for many, many decades. So we're not talking about a specific president or specific prime minister that suppressed information, because this goes way back. This is not about elected officials, right? This is about the forces that sit beyond government that really do pull the strings, right?
Correct.
And this is, there's been so much that's been suppressed. Now, people may look at this and look at it as being deluded nonsense. However, here we have mathematical evidence. Now, it either plays out or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then they could conclude, yes, it was deluded nonsense. But what I like about this is the fact that this is the bravery of putting it out there, being prepared to be shown to be wrong or right, as the case may be, right? And this is why I think this work is important, because this is you putting your professional reputation on the line, elevated Planet to a degree, but you are the one that really has this information down. And I know that Jolie and I both have a lot of trust and faith in what you do, because we've seen the evidence for ourselves. But nevertheless, I agree with you. I think that knowing what we know about the suppression of information over these last few decades, that it tells you that you can make yourself into a target as well.
Well, John, I genuinely believe that this world and every person inside of it is massively, massively controlled. Now, you meet somebody out there who's got a 10 or a 15-year plan. You're really impressed by that individual. You think, wow, that's astonishing. This person has really taken their life seriously. Well, how ridiculous is it to actually think that the forces or the people or the organizations that truly control the world don't have a 100-year plan or a 150-year plan? And what's playing out now is just part of this, plan. I mean, John, I'm discovering what I've discovered with and through numbers. And you're right, numbers speak to me. Don't just throw a whole bunch of numbers down in front of me, because that means nothing to me. But pose a challenge to me around numbers and patterns and people and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then suddenly it all starts to make sense. If I can put it like this, the cosmos vibrates and I begin to pick it up and I understand these things and intuition flows. But I have no doubt that this is probably nothing new to the very few that understand how this world is working and who are controlling it. But the thing is, they don't want us to know this, because. So let's say I am wrong, John. I'm running the risk of basically being branded and labeled, one of the biggest maniacs that's ever hit the planet. Who should be taken off in a straitjacket. But if I'm right, then this is research that is absolutely blowing the lid off everything. Whether this top secret information, if I'm going to put it, exists within the Pentagon, or within the Catholic Church or whatever, I don't know. But there is absolutely no doubt, and I've seen it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Through the thousands of charts that I've built and analyzed over the years that I've been doing it since 2016, that we are a grand organized design. We are absolutely a grand organized design from the moment we are born. And that in itself is a big enough mental paradigm for people to have to get over. Never mind what we're dealing with here in terms of soul groups. This is totally the next level.
Right.
This might freak a whole bunch of people out, but if it does, then it's simply because they're not ready for it.
Yes.
John, if we can just move on to the next slide, and this brings in the really interesting things around number synchronicities. So I've looked at Donald Trump, and my opinion is that he absolutely wins the next presidential election. There's a huge shock for the family, and then there is some cataclysmic family event that takes place 2027, with the full impact being felt in 2028. But now we need to move beyond all of this. And now it's almost like we need to climb into the helicopter and we need to leave America and we need to fly even higher to start to go and get a bigger picture of what is happening. So at the very top of the slide, I've said that number synchronicities reveal so much. So let me explain. 2022 is a number 6 year, and there's the calculation explaining it. And as we've discussed, John, in our previous videos, it is the year of extreme relationship upheaval. It is all the twos, which is the feminine energy, and it's just bursting out. So it's a year of just the very worst emotions flooding through the system. And we've seen that today with Roe versus Wade in America. Then 2023 is going to be a number 7 year. And that would be very simple. 2 + 0 + 2 + 3 = 7. Easy. Now, looking at the number 7, what is the number 7? The number 7 is all about planning. It's all strategic, secret planning. So the number 7 is quite a secretive vibration. It's about realigning. It's about strategizing, etc., etc. It's almost, if you will, a calm before the storm. Okay, so there's a lot of activity in the numbers 1 to 6. Then there's a lull during a 7, and then when a number 8 appears, that is when things are really starting to get real. And then the 9 is when it really, really gains full momentum. Hence the number line 1 through to 9. Mm-hmm. So 7 is the lull. Now let's have a look at this. The United States of America, if you add up all the letters, if you assign numbers, now I haven't done it because it's just too much to put into this. But anybody who's really interested, John, can either get hold of you or get hold of me. Total's 84. 8 and 4 is 12, 1 and 2 is 3. So therefore, the name United States of America vibrates with the number 3. Now, because all numbers add up to 9, if you remove 6 from 9 or subtract 3 from 9, you get the number 6. Mm-hmm. Therefore, America's shadow or emotional vibration is the number 6, right? Which brings 2022 into play. Yeah, it's 6 on 6 synchronicity. It's simple. If we're in a number 6 year and America's got a number 6 shadow emotional vibration, that's when it's going to happen. Look at what has happened today, Roe versus Wade. Look at how America is eating itself alive from the inside. It is probably in a state of emotional upheaval right now, unlike they've experienced for decades. Now let's go and have a look at the United Kingdom. United Kingdom totals 65. 6 and 5 is 11, 1 and 1 is 2. That brings in shadow 7. That means that the emotional upheaval that America is experiencing right now, the 6 on 6 synchronicity, that is very likely going to happen in the UK in 2023. Right. And if you just look at the papers and if you look at what's going on out there, they're talking about the challenges that people living in the United Kingdom are going to be facing in the very, very foreseeable future. They're talking about tremendous hardship, massive cost of living, increases, etc., etc., etc. So there it is. So to me, what this is revealing is that the UK is headed into extremely difficult times in 2023. Now we look at the leader of the Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He's got a number 6 life path. If people don't know how to calculate that, all they need to type into Google is 365 pin code life path calculator, and up will come a calculator, and they can just enter his date of birth into it, and it'll explain how I got to that. Now, look at what he's had to experience this year. A number 6 universal year synchronizing perfectly with this man's life path. When did the war in the Ukraine start? This year. Look at the responsibility that this man has had to assume this year, which is perfectly in keeping with his life path. Look at the relationships that he's having to forge with international leaders, etc., etc., etc. So there it is. It's all clear as day. I mean, nothing is random. Now we look at Russia. If we take Russia, RUSSIA, and there I've put in the values, Russia totals 24, 2 and 4 is a 6. It's therefore no random accident, 6 on 6 synchronicity, that things have got hot around Russia this year. Right. Because Russia, the name Russia vibrates to the number 6. And therefore there's a synchronicity with 2022, not random at all. Mm. Now we look at Iran, 9915, 246. So I'm looking at you and I'm saying, what's going to happen with Iran? this year?
I wonder.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There have been a couple of little skirmishes and a couple of interesting things, and Iran thumbing their nose at the US, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, are we going to see some very, very interesting development taking place around Iran in the remainder of this year? And if that is the case, then it should be no surprise, because there's the 6-on-6 synchronicity.
Yes.
We look at the birthday of Volodymyr Zelensky, the 25th. He's born on the 25th, which gives you a 7. That shows you how important next year is going to be for him. Next year is going to be massive for him on a personal level, because there's the number 7 of 2023 synchronizing with the number 7 of his birthday.
Yes.
You take the name of the country, Ukraine, it totals 34. There's another 7.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's happening this year it's really going to happen in the Ukraine next year, because there it is. There's the synchronicity. You look at Vladimir Putin, his date of birth gives him a number 7 life path. Therefore, next year is going to be a life path significant year for Vladimir Putin. And if he is on a mission for power and control, et cetera, then that is the year when it's really, really, really going to ramp up dramatically. Or it will be the year when he will be planning. Are you with me? Strategically. Because remember, the number 7 could be a lull. Just because it's a lull doesn't mean that you need to drop your guard.
Right.
So it could be that next year will be the year that he is really, really planning in terms of what does this full-scale plan of Russia and Putin and that look like in terms of the world, and also in terms of strategic partners that it might have. Now we go into Joe Biden. Joe Biden's date of birth gives him a number 2 life path, which gives him a number 7 shadow life path, because 2 + 7 = 9. So what does this mean? 2023 is going to bring just the worst type of emotions for Joe Biden. Now, this is already a man who's on the ropes.
Yes.
It's evident. I mean, it is so obvious in terms of how he is struggling as the president of the United States. John, I don't think one needs to be a rocket scientist to realize he's not well. He is not well. He is completely out of his depth. And he, as the current president of the United States, is heading into a year which is going to synchronize with his shadow or emotional life path. In other words, if you think it's bad now, you ain't seen nothing yet. So as I'm painting this to you, Kamala Harris is born in 1964. That's her career number, 1964. You add them together, you get 20. 1 + 9 + 6 + 4 is 20. That's a 2. It brings in the shadow 7. So next year is synchronizing with Kamala Harris on a career level. Does this mean that Joe Biden in next year is not going to be up to the job? Is it just going to be too much for him? Because if I look at the numbers, there's a very high probability that this is the case. Could it mean that Kamala Harris now has to suddenly step in as the next president of the United States? If this is the case, then it's clear. It's clear in her numbers because of the 7-on-7 synchronicity. And John, while people might say, oh, Chris, you're really fishing. You're really just blindly throwing darts into a dartboard. No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. What I'm doing is I'm looking at synchronicities between incredibly important numbers in people's lives and the number of a year that is coming up. And I'm seeing patterns and connections. And I think that these need to be taken very seriously, because I wouldn't be in the slightest bit surprised if next year there is a very, very difficult decision that the United States is going to have to make around Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that could potentially bring the first female president of the United States into play.
Interesting.
Which could again tear America to pieces, because let's face it, there are a lot of people in America who will not be accepting of a female president. And if Kamala Harris has got a run against Donald Trump in terms of, the Democratic presidential candidate versus the Republican presidential candidate, can you imagine how that cocktail would eat America alive? This is why, John, I mean, Suzanne said to me the other day, Chris, do you think you could possibly find something good at the moment? And I said to her, love, it's not that I'm looking for trouble or problems or whatever. It's just, I honestly believe that as a world, as a species, humanity, we are entering one of the most difficult, dangerous, challenging and dark times of our history. And that's just how it is going to be. Now, being forewarned is being forearmed, because then you can begin to think strategically. Well, if this crazy guy that John Drew chatted to is right, then, hell, I had a heads up way in advance, and I took this into consideration, that into consideration, during dramatic economic downturn, how would I cope? How would I cope with my family? If the world is headed into a war, which I actually believe we are, and I'm going to show you why, where would I like to choose to see this war out, if I can put it? Are you with me? Do you want to be in a third world country, a first world country? And as I say, John, guaranteed, a lot of people are going to look at this interview and they're going to think that's crackpot. And that's perfectly fine. But I know, John, that there is an enormous amount of value in terms of what I'm sharing with you tonight. And if only a fraction of what I'm sharing with you comes to pass, and people have taken this seriously, maybe to the tune of 25%, they will actually be thanking you and I.
Right. I understand from Suzanne's perspective, kind of looking at this and looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, because there's a lot of rather grim information here in terms of the future, the way that the planet is actually heading, and the humanity is heading for right now, taking this at the value that you're bringing to us. Now, at the same time, I do agree totally with the idea that you have to get through the darkness to get to the light. And I do believe that nothing is happening by accident. It's, there is, as you say before, a grand organized design, a GOD behind all this that kind of takes us to where we need to get to. And sometimes you have to go through that darkness, even though you wouldn't choose it for yourself, as you sit here now in your mortal vessel looking at life and thinking, okay, we want a nice bit of rainbows and unicorns, would be lovely, but this is the numerical reality.
Well, you see, John, the other thing is also, and I think what is incredibly important to remember, is we are not human beings having a spiritual journey. We are spiritual beings having a human journey. Right. This is what people get fundamentally wrong.
Yes.
You see, this is all dark and doomsday and devastation if you approach it from the perspective of a human being having a spiritual journey, which is exactly what the church would love you to believe.
Right.
But if you engage the mind pivot and you say, I am a spiritual being having a human journey, and everything that is experiencing is actually enriching me on a spiritual level, then it's a completely different experience. Yes, John, it gives me no joy to bring information like this into the public arena or the public realm. I wish I could be singing a different message. But John, I spend all day, every day, obsessed with numbers, obsessing over patterns, trends, etc., etc. And the thing is, what I am seeing is a tremendous amount of darkness. And that doesn't mean I'm not searching for the light, but I'm really, really struggling to find it. I'm talking on a global level now, on a leadership level now.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, then why should I be afraid to share it?
Right.
And this is why I keep on coming back to 2027, because I believe that's when everything turns. That's when the light comes and replaces the dark. But we are going through a very dark time now, and it's necessary for us, because then when we move beyond 2027, we're going to be moving forward with a different consciousness. John, look at the consciousness of people at the moment. Look at the consciousness of big business. It's all about profit. I mean, as much as these CEOs and that would love to talk about green this and green that, et cetera, it's all about profit. It's all about share price. It's all about what the return on investment is. And don't forget, John, that the word nature resonates with the number 7. So next year, if you look at how we've taken care of our planet, and that was said in a very cynical way, is next year not the year when nature also starts to deliver dramatic blows back to us in terms of, well, this is my year. This is the year that resonates with my name, nature.
Yes.
You know, I am now going to become a force, and I'm going to exert back on you what you have exerted on me.
Yes, that's something that definitely we've talked about before, and it's amazing to think just how significant the abuse of the planet has been by mankind over these last few decades. And a point that you've made before in the past is all about equilibrium, and it's all about the pendulum that swings. If it swings it to an extreme degree in one direction, it has to balance out. So therefore, if it's this far over here, then it has to get to this far over here.
Exactly.
Back into balance. Therefore, if you think about this as abuse of mankind here, of the planet, then the planet has got to come back and abuse mankind over here, right? And that is something that would not be a pretty sight. But
well, you see, John, now you're really on my wavelength, because it's not nice when the chickens come home to roost, is it?
No.
But I do believe that the chickens are coming home to roost in huge flocks for all of humanity. And what I mean by that, John, is there's not going to be a single person on this planet who's not going to be left untouched by what is going to happen in the next couple of years, in order for the shock factor to be restored. And you know what, John, let's take it one step further. If you look at the destruction of the planet, it's driven by greed, it's driven by excess, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know, where do you see the greatest greed? Where do you see the greatest excess, et cetera? This has been fueled by captains of industry. This has been fueled by billionaires.
Yes.
This has been fueled by governments who have worked hand in glove with these companies, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look at the leadership of the world at the moment, and you look at the state of the world, and if I'm right, and we're going into this world of complete devastation, then there is not a single world leader out there who is actually not directly responsible for the mess that we are in.
Yes. I find it beggars belief, but you know, this idea of fossil fuels, we've not needed them for decades. It's all been suppressed. And the fact is, you think about how much of the abuse of the planet could have been resolved decades ago.
Exactly.
And this is is crazy to think. And I know that sounds beyond the realms of most people's understanding of the way life is, but over time, people will understand that has been the case. And the level of suppression has been enormous, and it's been highly destructive.
Massive. So, John, if we move on to the next slide, because I want to have a look at the next couple of years. If 2027 proves to be a lull, where, if you will, there is a lot happening behind the scenes, okay? You know, planning, et cetera, forces, allegiances, alliances, et cetera, being formed, then this is going to manifest in 2024, because that's the way the cycle works. The number line 1 through to 9 has the number 8 as the number of manifestation. That's the number that everything becomes visible. In other words, it becomes material, physical. So if we look at 2024, what does 2024 and number 8 year resonate? Well, firstly, it resonates with China, because China has got a number 8 energy. So therefore, as a futurist, a human futurist, looking into the future, I'm saying that like this year, where something massive happened around Russia, with it being a number 6 energy, which perfectly correlated with the number 6 of Russia. So if you look to the future, China synchronizes with 2024. So does India, but from an emotional level, a shadow level. Okay, not a physical level. North Korea has got an 8 energy. The United Nations, the UN, 3 + 5 gives you 8. So 2024 brings the United Nations into frame.
Right.
Yeah, it brings the European Union into frame. I've made an error on those calculations there. It should be 5 + 3 for the EU, not 5 + 5. But there it is. So look at what 2024 brings. It brings China into frame. It brings India on an emotional level. It brings North Korea. It brings the United Nations. It brings the European Union into play. So the thing is, whatever the Chinese are planning, etc., this is when it's going to happen in 2024. There it is. It's as clear as a bell. Yeah, and that brings BRICS into play. Now, BRICS is this trade alliance, and that's Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. So connect the dots.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
This is China and Russia and India and South Africa and these countries are massively, massively tied into each other. Massively tied into each other. The fact that Putin is in a bit of trouble at the moment, and his army has taken a bit of a battering, etc., or quite a big battering. Is it a strategic play? Is what he has done in the Ukraine a strategic play in order to see how the West responds, more specifically Biden, with big brother China sitting behind the scenes watching and looking on with tremendous interest to see, well, if this, then that, if this, then that, what can we learn, etc., 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 and how does this inform our plan that we want to launch in 2024?
Right.
Then we go into 2025, which is a number 9 year, which is the end of this cycle of 9. It began in 2017 and it has run through to 2025. So now 2025, this is when, if you will, everything that has happened in the number 8 year really gets real. And this is the closing out of the cycle, etc., etc., etc. Now, it's rather interesting. John, if you look at the Middle East, and the Middle East has always been an absolute hotspot and a hotbed, for conflict, etc., etc. Strange that Iraq has a number 9 vibration. Now, I just put that in purely for interest's sake, but I wouldn't be in the slightest bit surprised if something during 2025 happens either in or around Iraq, etc., because there's the natural vibration.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And then you look one step further and you look at Israel. Now, the thing is, what we're talking about here are countries that are absolute hotbeds. Israel resonates with a number 1 vibration, which basically brings in 2026. And what is very interesting, John, is if there is going to be a world war, and a lot of people have said that they can't see it not happening, that the world is going to war, it could be the East versus the West. And if it is the East versus the West, well, then it's going to be basically America and its allies versus China and its allies. Isn't it amazing that World War I ended in a number 1 universal year, 1918?
Right.
Isn't it amazing that World War II ended in a number 1 universal year, 1945? There's the sequence.
Yes.
So if there is going to be a world war, then isn't it reasonable to think that it could end in 2026? Because that would be continuing the trend, continuing history.
Yes.
Now I'm going to throw a really interesting thing into the mix, John. If you think about the number line 1 through to 9, in terms of activity, 1 is the beginning, 2 is the terrible twos, or if you think about a child, and number 3 is when things actually really start to happen. So therefore, 2 of the 9 years in a 9-year cycle can literally be cancelled in terms of what's happening end game.
Right.
Okay. So let's say 2026 is the year when this war takes place, World War III or whatever, etc., and ends. Let's say it ends. So let's then reverse 7 years. Because as I've just shared with you, the first 2 years of a cycle of 9 are irrelevant. So let's go back 2026, 2025, 2024, 23, 22, 21, 20. If we reverse 7 years from 2026, we land up in 2020. What happened in 2020, John?
Our friend COVID and so much more.
And I'm pausing there because people can make up their mind. I am purely taking numbers the way I see them, the way I understand them, the way I interrogate them, the way it makes sense to me. And I'm purely presenting them to people to think about. That's all I want. I'm not asking people to agree with me. Many will disagree with me, but all I'm asking them to do is to open up their minds and to begin to think. And if 2026, if I am right, and 2026 is the end of World War III, whatever it is, which would make sense timeline, because then the following year, 2027, would be the search for enlightenment, which is completely in line with Master Number 11. So from 2026, you reverse 7 years, you suddenly get 2020.
Yeah.
And that starts to ask a lot of questions of 2020.
Yes.
How random was 2020? Or was this global lockdown planned all along? I'm not answering that. I'm just, when I apply numbers the way I think about them, that just stood out for me. And it's like, well, there it is. Do with it what you'd like.
Yes.
John, let's go on to the next slide. Right. Go on. We've got Barack Obama. Please take your cursor arrow and go up to 2017, the year that Donald Trump became president. Right. So when I model the life path of Barack Obama, there you see the 4 and the 7, the red 16, 7. That's exactly what I've described to you. Remember earlier, the tower, the collapse of the tower, the 16, the combination of 4 and 7 being a devastating combination. That shows the devastation that Barack Obama experienced when Trump became president in 2016.
Yes.
Go down to 2024. What do you see dominating the life of Barack Obama again? 16-7. That shows you that modeling the life path of this man shows absolute devastation again and complete chaos in the following year, the number 9 that presents itself. I mean, between 2024 and 2028, Barack Obama has got numbers that are changing every single year: 16-7, 18-9, 21-3, 13-4, 15-6. This man lives a lifetime of chaos during these couple of years. How do you think this man's life gets turned into chaos?
Donald.
Exactly. Now let's go across and let's go and have a look at Hillary Clinton. What do we see in 2023? That's next year for Hillary Clinton. We see the 7 and the 4 colliding. I've just told you it's a devastating combination.
Yes.
This is what is happening now. I mean, this is the knock-on effect in America as a result of what is happening now, like today's decision, Roe versus Wade. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Let's go and have a look at 2024. Again, 8 and 4. 2025, 9 and 4. The number 22 is the master builder, but it can present itself in a positive way or a negative way.
Yes.
So Hillary Clinton is going to experience absolute chaos in her life from 2023 through to 2025. There it is for her. There it is for Barack Obama. Who's going to sow this chaos into their lives? Again, I come back to it. To me, there's only one person, the Donald.
Yes.
That's why I say he's Machiavellian, because he's relentless, he's ruthless, he's clinical, he's cynical. He's the only person who can do this to these people.
Yes.
Right, let's go down to the next slide, where I bring in the life path that I mapped of Klaus Schwab, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum. This is the event that takes place in Davos every single year, where the world's leaders fly in, the billionaires fly in. Klaus Schwab has got 3 3s in his chart. It's an absolutely incredible chart. It's one of the first times I've ever done it. His birthday, his birth month, and his birth year all reduced down to the number 3, wow, which is the fire energy, the communicator, the inspirational communicator. But underneath lies 6s. So the thing is that tells us that 2022 is going to impact Klaus Schwab massively on an emotional level, because he's got all the sunk 6s in his chart. And John, anybody who wants to actually go and really dig into this, all they need to do is go on to Suzanne and my website, chrisandsuzannestyles.com. They scroll down to the bottom to where the blogs are, and there they'll be able to see the enormous research paper that I published on Klaus Schwab. Now look at this man's life. Go to 2023 and look at the red numbers. 2020, let's go down. 14.5, 16.7, 16.7, 16.7, 14.5, 14.5. You're dealing with all the karmic octaves here.
Right.
Karmic 16, karmic 14. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Karmic 16, everything that you thought to be true just dissolves around your ears. Karmic 15, loss of personal freedom, etc., etc., etc. Now remember, this is the man who has been driving the Great Reset. He wrote the book, The Great Reset. Now Klaus Schwab is the one who's right at the forefront in terms of saying, well, we need to create a world where basically you don't own anything. Yeah, but if we don't own anything, then who owns it? Who owns what?
Yes.
Yeah, and this is where I have a huge fundamental problem with what Klaus Schwab stands for and the World Economic Forum, because in my humble, I am not seeing Klaus Schwab and these individuals standing for the good, for genuinely standing for the good of humanity.
Right.
I actually feel that they are trying to exercise extreme control on humanity.
Right.
And that's why you've got these karmic octaves here that are in his life. But
Yes.
the thing is, John, and I can tell you right now, if Klaus Schwab and whoever it is that really controls the world, if their plan is that they really, really, really want to control humanity and suppress us, etc., etc., then that is the plan that they are going to try and force upon us over the next couple of years, up to and including 2025 and 2026.
Right.
That's again why I say there's major drama in this guy's chart. Major drama. Whatever their plan is, it's not going to go according to plan.
I see.
And John, if it didn't go according to plan, okay,
Uh-huh.
who would be the only person who could really throw a spanner in the works? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to look when Donald Trump flew in. There was a picture of him sitting all by himself, surrounded by Justin Trudeau, Angela Merkel, Boris Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah, he's always the lone wolf, the one. Yet he is the individual, if you will, who takes these people on. And there it is. And so, what I'm seeing here in Klaus Schwab's numbers is that whatever this plan is that he's got for the Great Reset through the World Economic Forum and associates, this dog's not going to hunt.
Right.
Something is going to happen that is going to really, really throw this plan out of sync, turn this plan on its head, because these are not good numbers for him.
Right.
This shows that his life gets thrown into a state of chaos. And look at his numbers in 2026. Look at the 777, the 7 combining with a 4.
Yes.
Now in 2026 for Klaus Schwab is an absolute nightmare. It is the worst possible year that you could imagine in terms of the combination of numbers.
Right.
I already feel shock and horror when I look into his future and see what awaits him in 2026. John, now we come across to George Soros, the billionaire. Now, George Soros, very, very, very well respected as a philanthropist.
Yes.
But look at George Soros's numbers from 2022 through to 2029. You've got karmic 16 in devastating format. John, I see the same when I analyze the chart of Stephen Schwarzman,
Okay.
the CEO of the Blackstone Group in America, which is that enormous investment house.
For sure, yeah. Yeah.
So the thing is, John, this is why I say, whenever I analyze the charts of world leaders, of billionaires, John, all I'm seeing is chaos in every single person's chart over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
This is why I have honestly decided that I wanted to get on the line with you and give this message. John, I'm a person who thrives off positivity. I thrive off inspiration. I thrive off good stuff. But try as I may, I am just meeting darkness wherever I turn, no matter who I analyze. And I'm only seeing the darkness being released after 2026. Now, either I'm a complete nutcase or I have connected with something that is out of this world and it is using me to communicate this message into this world. But either way, John, if people take this seriously, then they should really start to think about, well, if the world is going to pot, how am I going to cope? What am I going to do? As opposed to just putting their head in the sand and thinking everything's going to be okay. And that's what people like to do. People like to live in denial.
Yes.
No one wants to hear these messages. And I'm not telling people what to do with their lives. I'm not telling them how to implement risk management strategies. I'm not telling them what risk management strategies. But what I am doing through your platform is I'm sending a very, very severe warning out to every person on this planet that the next couple of years, we are going to have to navigate extreme times that are more extreme than we can even begin to fathom.
Yeah.
And how are we going to survive? Well, if you think about it, isn't that where the humanity comes back?
Right.
How do you survive? You survive by working together. You survive by helping each other, etc., etc. And John, right now, the world is quite devoid of that.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe the great reset that is actually going to happen through all of this is that people are going to become more human. We're going to start being reconnected with what matters.
Right.
What matters is your relationship. What matters is how you treat another human being. What matters is how you think about another human being. What matters is that you become aware of another human being's environment and how can you help them, as opposed to the fact that, oh, look, I'm driving a new Mercedes.
Right. Right.
Is this great reset that is going to take place, unlike what Klaus Schwab has spoken about, actually not one which shocks us from the material realm, which we are so ensconced in, where it's where you live, what you drive, etc., it's into the spiritual realm. And actually, that's what I think it exactly is going to happen.
Right.
That's why 2027 is going to be so incredibly important, because it's the year of that spiritual awakening with and through the master number 11 energy, which is about illumination, enlightenment, teaching, and intuition. It's the feminine energy.
Yes.
And it makes sense, John, because what we see going on in the world right now is not feminine energy, it's masculine energy. War.
Right.
So when is the feminine energy going to kick in? When is this age of Aquarius, are you with me, going to kick in?
Yes.
Because right now it ain't happening. That dog's not hunting.
No.
But if I'm right and I've got the timeline right, then it's going to kick in post 2027, which is exactly according to a cosmic design. And that brings me back to the thing that frustrates me the most and keeps me awake at night is who has this cosmic design?
Yeah, it does. It makes you wonder exactly how many people actually can reach these conclusions for themselves and know exactly all these things. But, I mean, I value what you tell us, Chris, and I know when you read into the numbers and you kind of feel your way through it as to what the implications are, to me, the thing that kind of marries up is the fact that I've been hearing from so many different sources, which are not necessarily mathematically based the way that you do it, but everybody's singing from a very similar hymn sheet. I don't hear contradictions that we are going to go through some very tumultuous times. I don't know what it looks like. I don't pretend to know what it looks like. This is kind of where I see the value of this, is that we, being forewarned is being forearmed, to the point you were making before. And I know this is going to go beyond, it's going to go over the heads of many. And I don't, when I say that, I'm not disrespecting anybody, because I don't have to wind the clock back that far where I would be completely in that group, right? That would be me. So it wasn't that long ago that was the way that I thought about life. I was in the material world. I was kind of left brain. Everything was kind of like as I'd been conditioned to believe it was. So whilst I have been very fortunate to come across what I would classify as a form of awakening to a different version of reality, which is far better. But within this has also come various warnings of the times to come. Now, you've been consistently telling us this throughout this year as we've been going through this. However, as I say, I kind of like go back to the other sources as well. I've got nobody presenting me with rainbows and unicorns. So I believe there is something that is cataclysmic that is going to happen to our version of reality. That there is a great reset of some persuasion that is going to be out there, is going to impact us all. So the more we get the message out there, and I'm very grateful for this, Chris, because this is where I think you do humanity a huge favor, is it gives us the opportunity to prepare ourselves so that when something does happen, then people will kind of in the back of their minds will think, hang on a second, there was that deluded nonsense I was listening to. Hang on a second, maybe it wasn't deluded nonsense. We can go back over there and people will realize that you don't need to panic. You just kind of need to get with the program and understand the way that life truly operates. And it is a beautiful thing. We have to go through the density to get to the light, but realizing that there is light is important.
John, you've nailed it. And also the fact that we're going through very dark times right now, and that I believe these will persist through to 2026, whereby it will begin to wash out, is also calling light workers to start to get ready. Because do we have any idea of what state humanity will be in by 2027? John, look at what happened to people as a result of COVID in 2020.
Yeah.
Look at the emotional impact of COVID. Look at the financial impact. Look at the spiritual impact. Look at the mental health issues.
Yes.
Now, what if COVID is level 1 intensity compared to what we're going to experience, which is level 15?
Yes.
Can you imagine the state that people will be in by the time we get to 2020 in terms of mental health? Yes. In terms of anxiety, etc. So the thing is, this is why I take what I'm doing so seriously, because I actually believe that this is a call to arms in terms of light workers. And we're out there. There are not a lot of us. There are not a lot of us because we're still probably considered freaks. But the thing is, you know, and this is why I'm working so hard with and through numbers and patterns and human futurology, the discipline of human futurology, to actually set into people's minds that there's so much more to life than what we even think is going on right now.
Right.
That governments, that presidents, they've all kept us dumb. They've all kept us dumb. Let's just get it. Let's not beat around the bush. There's not one of them that hasn't kept us dumb or kept us oppressed or suppressed in terms of intelligence. But as light workers, what are we going to do in terms of 2027 and beyond? Because that's when humanity is going to be in a really bad way.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm comforted to a degree because I've been hearing stuff even today about communities of light workers coming together to start to form communities for when things go wrong, right? For when this happens, not if it happens, but when it happens. And that was the exact term that I've heard. So I think that, you know, what you're talking about here, Chris, it is going on, but it needs to step up, right? So we need to build this momentum and keep this momentum going.
Absolutely.
Because we have to prepare ourselves, because this is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. But if we know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, if we know that we have to get through the darkness to get to the light, then we keep going, right? You don't give up.
John, that's exactly it. And on that note, I always have a tremendous amount of gratitude to you and Julie and Elevated Planet and your platform and your community as being a channel for me to get this message out, you know, with and through Suzanne, who's an integral part of 365 PIN code as well. And, you know, I always remind everybody that the mathematical model that I built was also with a tremendous insight from her. Yes. So whilst I get to appear and deliver the news, what we are doing is getting out there with and through you. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So, yeah, you know, look, John, that's it. I genuinely was very apprehensive about tonight, but something just said to me that this message has got to get out. Mm-hmm. Now is the time. And it's very interesting that I should have chosen today, which is the 24th of June, 2022, which, as I said, 24 is a 6, June is a 6, 2022 is a 6. Now, if you add those 3 6s together, you get the number 18. And the number 18 is the number that is most associated with the shadow.
Right.
In other words, what's in the shadows, what's lurking, what's out there that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You see, it's very easy for people to kind of think of 666. Are you with me? I mean, we don't even need to go there. The mark of the beast and all of these kind of things. But if you actually think about 666 differently and you think, but hold on a moment, that's the shadow. Because 3 6s are 18. And if you go and look at tarot, the major arcana number 18 is the moon. Coincidence? I think not. So, what is all of this telling us? And I think that today, you and I have put a lot of light for people who are ready into the shadows of what is going on in this world right now, so that they can begin to prepare themselves. If they choose to do nothing with it, that's not our problem, John. We've met our obligations, you and I.
Right, right. And I do respect the fact that a lot of people will be not ready for this, but at the end of the day, if we're planting the seed, Chris, right? If you're planting the seed, I think that is something that may come to germinate when an event triggers it. So, I think that's the other side to this, even for those not yet ready and not prepared. And I respect that entirely. But seed planted, and should this come to pass, then people can come back and say, hang on a second, there is a grand organized design of which this is part. I don't need to panic. There is an army of people here that can help us all through this crisis to create a new version of reality, which is going to be so much lighter, brighter than we've ever known in the past. So
absolutely,
there are good things ahead after the darkness.
You nailed it, John.
Thank you, Chris. I truly appreciate it as always. I love having you on this channel to share your wisdom with us. And I'm a big respecter of what you do. I've seen the evidence of it time and again, of the frightening degree of accuracy. And, in some ways, I hope you're wrong. However, we'll see. Time will tell. And I think we need to brace ourselves. Chris, thank you again. Anyway, and thank you very much to our Elevated Planet community audience for sitting in and watching us here. Do feel free to reach out to me on johndrew@elevatedplanet.life or Jolene Gabrielle at elevatedplanet.life. And you can get hold of Chris and Suzanne at 365pincode.com. We're all open to any questions you may have, so do feel free to reach out. Thank you again. Thanks, Chris. And
pleasure,
thank you, everyone. And we'll speak to you again sometime soon. Thank you.